You're listening to Al Pastor, the show that helps you love God, love your neighbor, and eat more tacos. I'm your host, Pastor Brian. Welcome to the show. Well, hello. I want to welcome you to today's episode. We are going to be covering Genesis chapter 20 through chapter 21, verse 7. Please bear with me. My throat has been acting up. I've been putting off this podcast most of the day, hoping that it would feel better, and it doesn't. It's just really irritable and scratchy. I feel fine. However, if I'm a little bit deeper than normal, that's what's going on. I'm looking forward to Bible study, though. I've been sucking on a bunch of cough drops, so hopefully that'll help, and some throat lozenges. Either way, so Genesis chapter 20. Boy, oh boy, what in the world is happening here? It's like, okay, Abraham, it's like you go from high to low, and I just want to give you some food for thought. I want to ask some questions along with you. I want to encourage you to think about it. I want to encourage you to meditate on it. We see Abraham as he goes on a journey, and we can speculate as to what that journey was about. Perhaps it was business. We're not really given any of those details, but we see the similar situation which happened in Egypt. Now, by the way, we are going to see a repetition of this, not with Abraham, but it's going to be manifested in his son as well. So Isaac is going to end up doing the same exact thing. So a couple of questions. What's different and what's the same between this and going back to Genesis, I think it was 12. Yeah, I believe it was Genesis 12. I could be wrong. You'd have to double check me on that. What's different, what's the same, and what is going on here? So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. Now, I'm praying about this. If the Lord lets me, I would like to preach on Genesis 20 and weave in Genesis 12 as well on the incident in Egypt. We already talked a little bit about Egypt and the cycle that went on, and how Abram went ahead and went back to prayer. He went back to the altar. But this one's a little bit different, but yet it's similar at the same time. So we also see a different outcome as well. There's a definitive statement that lets us know that Sarah at this point had not been touched whatsoever by Abimelech. However, we see the same type of rebuke. So there's a rebuke from Abimelech. There was a rebuke, from Pharaoh, and both gave. Abraham was enriched as a result of this. So what's going on with that? Why is that happening? But again, the rebuke is the same, but we also see a rebuke of Sarah. So meditate, think about that. Do you have issues with it? Do you wonder what's going on? I'm going to leave it at that. You're like, come on, are you really? Yes. Yes, I am. But I do want you to think about it. I want you to struggle with it. I want you to wrestle with it. Really, really good. I hope that you can extract what the message could possibly be. Not only for Abraham, he's Abraham at this point. I've got to get used to that. I was programming my brain to say Abram for a while and Sarai, but now it's Abraham and Sarah. So see if you can extract the principle, see if you can extract the meaning. So that's the first section of what our reading is. Second section is the first 7 verses of chapter 21. I want to suggest to you 3 things that just incredibly jumped out at me. Let me read 21 verse 1. It says, "And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said." I would encourage you to circle that, underline it, mark it, do whatever you do, as he said. "And the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken." That phrase, "as he had spoken," I would circle that and highlight that. And then verse 4, Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old. Now here's the phrase, "as God commanded him." I I would circle that and highlight that and give that some thoughts. So as God said, as God had spoken, Abraham did as God had commanded him. Really a beautiful picture. Beautiful picture of obedience. We also see a picture of redemption. This fits within the cycle that I have highlighted several times of creation, blessing, promise, sin, God's redemption, and renewal. All of that is displayed here, in Genesis 20 through 21:7. Again, let me repeat that because I think we need to get this embedded in our brains. We have creation and blessing, promise, covenant. All of these are interchangeable concepts. Then we have sin. Sin, we do what we think is best. We end up going our way against what God has said. And then there's a redemption on God's part. Not on our part, but on God's part. And then there's renewal. That's here. You might say, well, where's the renewal? Renewal, the redemption is through the birth of his son, which is pictured through the person of Jesus Christ. And then we see the renewal and the reset button that is hit through the obedience and act of circumcision, which he is 8 days old. If it's any consolation to you, this will be the last time that Abraham has an episode of this sort. From this point forward, his faith is solidified. His faith in God's word goes unquestioned, if that is any consolation. But I also would encourage you to look at Abraham's life as our life, because we do go through these cycles. It's not necessarily cycles when it comes to passion, like I'm up or I'm down. It's cycles of progression in our knowledge of God, because there are times when we mess up and we blow it, when we end up doing something outside of God's will. Now, I know that a lot of times when we begin to talk like this, we think of particular sins, but it may not be any sin in particular, although it could be, right? But it could be just doing something outside the scope of God's word and God's will, his way. And so this happens a lot. happens a lot in my life. And part of that process, or the joy of discovery, or the joy of knowing God and being known by God, is learning more about him. And the way that we do that is in his word, of course. It's one of the best ways. And then, of course, through communication, and that's with talking to God in prayer. So I encourage you to incorporate both. Have a time of prayer, have a time of Bible study. And I am looking forward to Bible study. If you got any thoughts or any questions whatsoever, let me know. And we're going to have a good time. So we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to Al Pastor with Brian Overturf. If you found value in this, please subscribe and get updates. Most places podcasts are available. We're right here on Anchor FM through Spotify, also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. I hope you'll tune in for the next episode. Until then, we'll see you later.